Hey all, here are OS Reviews. Here in 2024, the latest talk of the town in the world of AR and VR has been Apple's Vision Pro, which has been ridiculed by some for being too expensive, priced at almost $3,500, and it's been marketed as this disruptive new piece of technology, essentially acting as a relatively performant computer strapped onto your head with a fast and sharp OLED screen, and it's using pass-through VR and cameras on the outside to still allow you to kind of be aware of what's happening around you. But what if I told you that there was actually a product that had a very similar premise launched in 2018 from a startup that was called Magic Leap? It was once hailed as the world's most secretive startup, raising over $1 billion from investors such as Google, and it was still in production until 2021, but can now be found in pretty much new condition on eBay for just around $100 to $150. And that's right, the Magic Leap 1 plays with similar concepts as the Apple Vision Pro, including spatial computing, which was a term that they also used in their marketing at the time, giving you the ability to browse the web as well as run applications directly on the device as a standalone unit. And using a transparent display, you're able to become aware of your surroundings as well as place virtual objects into the physical space around you through sensors including cameras as well as even eye tracking, so it is able to scan your pupils. Similar to the Apple Vision Pro, you can use it as a form of authentication for unlocking the device just by placing the headset and knows who is wearing the device, and also comes included with both gesture sensing using your hands to navigate certain apps, as well as using a remote that gives you a little bit more precision, which is one form of interaction that the Apple Vision Pro is not compatible with. What's also interesting is the display. They claim to be using some form of light field technology. It's able to simulate holograms with a couple of different focal planes to it, so it gives you a more convincing, again, effect of looking at an actual object. And before Apple's entry into the AR space, this was seen as a competitor to the Microsoft HoloLens, which some folks may have forgotten also cost a similar price, although HoloLens was marketed more towards enterprise as well as for app developers at the time, rather direct to consumers. In contrast, the Magic Leap 1 debuted a little bit north of $2,200, but kind of shows that it is a pretty costly development process, and it's a tough market to break into, seeing how Microsoft has kind of stopped producing new HoloLens devices, although still limited compared to traditional VR glasses, which can get you a little bit more immersed. So on these, it still seems like there's a smaller window or space where the virtual screen is, and if you kind of want an entire picture to be within your field of view, you have to step a little bit further back, but it's still slightly larger compared to the original Microsoft HoloLens by comparison. And one design aspect that I think is kind of smart about the Magic Leap 1 is they had the computer actually detached from the headset. So you can pop it onto your pocket, for instance, and as a result, the actual glasses themselves can be a little bit more lightweight, coming in at 316 grams compared to, say, the Apple Vision Pro, which is weighing in here at around 600 to 650 grams because the computer is directly inside of the glasses, and so that's all supported by your head as you're wearing it. It's almost 2 times heavier. The technical resolution of the light field displays are 1280 by 960 per eye, so definitely the sharpness is going to be inferior to the Apple Vision Pro, which is using more traditional OLED displays, much sharper, but these are pretty fast in terms of their refresh rate at the very least. Stereo speakers, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth are built on in, and an optional cellular model, and USB Type-C for charging, and it can last for around 3 hours of usage before you have to recharge it again, also quite comparable to the HoloLens and Apple Vision Pro. Similarly, there are built-in microphones as well for voice recognition, so you can talk to the headset to do things hands-free as well. And the compute pack was technically powered by an NVIDIA processor with quite a few GPU cores, as you can tell there, with 8 gigabytes of RAM, 128 gigs of built-in storage. After the operating system, you're left with a little under 100 gigabytes. The company has recently also made a Magic Leap 2, so they're still around, although their presence has diminished by quite a lot since the hype from the early days, and now they are very rarely talked about, and their Magic Leap 2 headset is now primarily aimed at enterprise, no longer becoming available for consumers to pick up. So what went wrong, and why is the price of this thing so ridiculously low cost now? Well, to answer that second point, it has to be attributed to Magic Leap's recent decision to completely discontinue this first generation Leap 1. The headsets will actually stop working at the end of 2024, so the time is ticking. If you wanted to try one of these things, it's kind of your last opportunity, but keep that in the back of your mind. Essentially, the glasses always have to authenticate and check in with the Magic Leap servers to have its certificate refreshed, and so it continues to keep on working. And with the servers that they are shutting down for Magic Leap 1, it will essentially become a brick going past this state. Now, I find this to be kind of ridiculous, and honestly, it's planned obsolescence at its finest example there. Even though the sales were extremely low and again not very successful for this product, the hardware itself is still fully functional. But to completely end the life cycle of this product using essentially a kill switch just because it's no longer able to authenticate with their servers is again just kind of ridiculous and just very sad. Especially for some of the original customers out there, I think this move has just triggered quite a bit of anger as well as distrust into this company going forwards, and it's just a not so great situation. So only time will tell whether they'll go back on this or perhaps make some type of workaround so that maybe they will no longer provide software updates or you no longer are able to download any new apps but can at least continue using it without it being bricked. But we'll see. Or maybe certain developers will be able to root it or hack it and make it more open source. But that's kind of the situation at the moment, and as a result why again that price point is extremely low, even though the hardware is technically still relatively powerful and still usable at this point in time. Kind of a wake-up call for the industry as well to just stop with practices like this, and perhaps it was just a poorly designed system from the start. So requiring that server-side authentication and renewing of certificates is just not a great design decision now that we think about it, since those servers can technically go down if a company also goes defunct. At the very least, for once a premium pair of AR glasses, the presentation is done quite well, and it's a massive box. On the inside there is this whale with the Magic Leap kind of avatar, which is kind of cute. You have the instruction guide on top, says Creator Edition, pretty well documented with all of the various pieces and components for how to wear the computing pack onto your pockets, as you can tell there. Now, one con here, very similar to the Apple Vision Pro and also the Microsoft HoloLens, is there are no built-in diopter adjustments on the glasses themselves. And that means if you are near or far-sighted, you'll have to wear your contacts or purchase an optional prescription lens to pop into these glasses as an extra accessory, which isn't great. Really would prefer some of those built-in diopter adjustments for better accessibility, but it is what it is. Otherwise, down below here, there's also kind of another link that you can take a look at for more status and safety info, and down below the foam, we have the actual glasses itself, as well as a label on the right, the Lightpack, aka the computer, with the, again, NVIDIA processor, as well as the remote control. So it does have a trackpad on the top, which is touch-sensitive LED lights and haptic vibration motors to give you that sensation similar to something like a Wii nunchuck with a little bit more tactility, a shutter key, OK key, and the back here is also coated in soft touch rubber that makes it a little bit more comfy to grip. Underneath the flaps, you'll find access to a USB Type-C charger as well as cable for both the remote as well as for the computer side as well, making it possible to charge both the computer with the built-in battery for the headset as well as the remote control at the same time. The remote, by the way, can last around 6 to 7 hours of usage, so you don't have to charge it quite as often as the Lightpack for the computer. Other cute accessories include a lanyard strap for the remote, again similar to the Wii, so you don't fling it off, and also there is kind of this neat little badge that says Free Your Mind Magic Leap 1. Other extras include a soft microfiber cleaning cloth in this gradient color effect similar to the packaging. You can use to wipe off the lens if it gets dirty. And up top here, you also find some additional fitting pieces, including adjustable nose pads, as well as a forehead pad as well to get a more comfortable fit. And by the way, that charger is rated at 45 watts, so it's relatively fast actually, and can be used to charge smartphones and computers as well. So taking a quick look at the hardware of the glasses themselves, again, since the computing pack and battery are technically in this separate module, it is able to remain a little bit more lightweight and comfortable as you're wearing it. It seems just a bit more normal, I would say, compared to the Apple Vision Pro, which is definitely a larger kind of visor design, though it still is not the slimmest pair of glasses that we've seen. Something like the Nreal or Xreal Airs that look like sunglasses probably still takes the cake as being the most lightweight pair of display glasses on the market, but of course you have much fewer sensors and hardware inside compared to something like this. That being said, it's not bad. It's constructed mainly out of polycarbonate plastic with some magnesium alloy and also some of the memory foam padding. It does feel relatively soft and comfy, kind of like a pair of active noise cancelling headphones, and the entire head strap here can then expand outwards as you are pulling it over your head. You can also tell some of the drivers there for the stereo speakers, which are open style, and when we look inside again, the screens on these are going to be completely transparent. We're also able to see some of the sensors, including the various cameras that can track your motion and also scan your room so that it knows how to place virtual objects correctly. And it's not just floating randomly, but it's actually on the floor. It knows where the walls of your room are as well. And even more cameras in the front, as you can tell there as well, and one's looking outwards here on the top too. So there are tons of cameras, and that is why, computationally speaking, true AR glasses like this, along with the Apple Vision Pro, are going to be more complex than VR glasses, because the computer has to be constantly processing the dimensions of the room that you're in, how you're engaging with the wall, the ceiling, in addition to the game itself and what's happening on the inside. Compared to true VR that is closed off from your environment, it doesn't need to be aware of what is happening around you, the walls, things like that. And that's why the GPU has to be a bit more powerful, but this compute pack does run pretty toasty as it's always calculating using the sensors and cameras. USB Type-C there for charging as well as data transfer. So if you connect it to your computer, you can drag and drop files over onto this if you're trying to use it as a movie player, for example, or transfer files out, and it just clips onto, again, your pocket. The very back just features some soft touch rubber so it doesn't slide around when we're placing it onto a desk. And last but not least, you'll also find some controls that you can access on the corner, including for volume, as well as a reality button that you can tap on to basically put it into sleep. The screens will turn off, but since they're transparent, you can still walk around and be aware, and then when you tap on it, it will instantly wake on again. Now on the top, there's also a standard 3.5mm headphone jack if you opt for this instead of wireless headphones like Bluetooth or using the ones built on in. Otherwise, the very front also features a power key that you can also tap on to kind of sense what the battery percentage is, and you'll see that there is a kind of light strip that will glow and flash accordingly. And with it powering on, we can also tell some of the infrared sensors, which are invisible to the human eye, but can be picked up by the frequency of the camera, start to kind of calculate and flash. Similarly, you can get a glimpse of what the display here looks like if we point it at the camera at a specific angle. It actually reminds me of a passage in the Three-Body Problem where one of the main characters is able to see kind of a countdown timer in front of his eyes. It's kind of like that because you're able to still see your physical space, but you have something interlaced on top of it. Transition into some screen recordings that I captured earlier while wearing it. So here we have the main home screen of the Magic Leap OS, and as I'm walking around, you can see how the entire dial here is just floating in space, and it has this kind of three-dimensional sense to it, almost like a hologram. Some of the images and icons are moving out towards me, having the sense of depth. And as I'm moving further away, it will stay fixed, relatively speaking, on this particular surface or wall. And moving the cursor around, you can see there is kind of this virtual beam that extends outward and then touches the dials. There's haptics on the controller that will vibrate to confirm that you are selecting on the correct application. So on the very top here, you can either turn on wireless options, including built-in Wi-Fi, as well as Bluetooth. Up top here, you can also jump into more advanced menu, as well as check out the battery percentage remaining for both the headset as well as the controller side. And jumping back here, we can go into our most recently opened applications, as well as all apps will expand the view into a much larger display, almost like having, I would say, around an 80-inch screen in front of you that shows all the applications I have available on the headset itself. Or of course, I can also download more from the App Store, which is called Magic Leap World. I'm also going to go into a quick demo now of some of the applications I found to be really quite interesting, starting with a few games. The first one here being actually Angry Birds, and this is actually quite clever. You're able to, again, map your position in space, which is represented by all these little mesh that you see, and we'll be able to hit on OK, confirming on this location, and then I can tap on play. It's a very, of course, classic Angry Birds game, but everything here is now in 3D with this augmented reality effect. You can still see your surroundings, so it seems like these very cute Angry Birds, as well as a little piggy, and the actual building itself is just inside of your room with your other surroundings. And again, the head tracking is done relatively well on the Magic Leap 1 because of all the cameras here. It knows its location. It's not having too much jitteriness to the footage. You can move the cursor around and see details of the Angry Bird, and then I can pull on the trigger here to essentially shoot out the Angry Bird, collapse the building, and of course win this particular level. It's very similar to the classic game, but everything now is just in 3D, and you're able to walk around your surroundings to get a better sense of how things are occurring. The games, of course, will get progressively more difficult. You can also lower your position, relatively speaking, to see the structure a little bit more easily and get a better aim as you are playing along. Certain applications will also require you to do another scan of the room that you're in, represented by the mesh, which is essentially visualized using the IR sensors as well as the cameras on board to locate where the edges are inside of the actual room you're in, so that when it places the virtual objects inside, it doesn't seem to kind of float in random locations. So it tells you to kind of move your head around, scanning all the edges and corners, and afterwards it should be good to go.
Hello? Hello? Yes.
A spy? Where was that? Where did she go?
Right, and here is one other application that I did find to be actually quite fun to play with. Again, it maps your current environment. It's kind of a detective story / escape room type of AR game. We're going to place a virtual standing desk here in our space, and what's really clever here is I can even pull on the lever here to raise the entire desk higher, or of course position it lower as well, depending on my preferences. And it actually looks quite convincing, I have to say. You can walk around, see the analog style TV as well as the suitcase, and then interact with it by clicking on the buckle to engage a three-dimensional model of this building, and eventually trying to solve the mystery of where a disappearance happened at this hotel.
I wonder why she snuck into our agent's room to do so. Hiding. Here's your next all report.
A case file has then been unlocked, and we can pull on this, place it anywhere in our virtual space to engage with certain clues.
We were waiting for the roast to finally arrive at our table when suddenly the whole room was filled with a bright light. One moment Mr. Fortescue was drinking his wine, and the next he was gone.
And the kind of aim of this particular game is to use the contextual clues provided by the files that you see here, as well as the images here, which are called impressions, that are essentially a snapshot of a point in time during this particular room in the hotel before this occurrence happened, before people vanished. And you're supposed to use this, as well as the 3D model here, to figure out where everyone was locating at this point in time by putting these objects in their corresponding spots inside of this building. And once that has been correctly identified, you're able to move on and kind of crack the case into the next chapter or scene, so to speak. It's actually relatively challenging, but quite fun in how you're able to look at this room again from different angles to figure out where this particular stand, for example, was located. It looks like this ice cream cart might have been in a position somewhere like this. We're able to walk around and still see this astronaut. You can look on top, in fact, and peer down at him. And after a couple of seconds or so, he should eventually start making other movements and patterns as well. Really just looks like he is floating there in space. Now he's starting to move across the carpet floor. So one thing I will say is for the best kind of tracking, and you'll see this in the software, is magically does tell you you need to be in a relatively well-lit environment. It doesn't have to be direct sunlight or bright as daylight, but it can't be completely dark either. So let's actually try positioning him one more time. Now we have a much larger astronaut, but the hologram is a bit more faint, as you can tell there, but definitely looks really quite cool as he's approaching. Quite realistic. We can again move upwards so that we are also bigger as well, and engage with this 3D model. So this is more of a quick demo more than anything, but still pretty interesting nonetheless. And this one called Gallery is just a virtual gallery of all your media files. You're able to rearrange the location on any wall inside of your room. You can even place multiple galleries, so to speak, with different floating windows in space. And as you are moving around, you can tell how it remembers its location here in the end, which is quite impressive. Like an actual TV screen, you can see that it remains fixed in this spot, and I can even see it from a different angle, including backwards, and it still keeps its correct orientation. So from here, if I move a little bit closer, you can also tell a little bit more detail. So just click on a couple of the preloaded files here it does just react and behave quite similar to a holographic, transparent TV of sorts. I can use the D-pad as well to swipe left and right through some of these media files just to serve as an example. Again, reposition this onto the wall or even onto the ground if I wanted to, and continue to engage with the content at different angles and still working relatively well. All right, and this one called Magic Pencil is basically a drawing and doodling app in the 3D augmented reality space. It also uses gestures, including your wrist to place into a palm to pull up additional menus, as you can tell there, that pop open whenever you do that. Or you can use the traditional cursor of the controller to still draw and doodle there in space just by holding down the trigger key. So you're able to sketch and draw, and it is reactive as you're moving closer and further away, as you can tell there, as I am stepping here on the side. So you can draw and paint essentially in 3D across the entire room. This is another application that uses either motion tracking or the controller, and it's a animated story. There is kind of a book that we can then open up just by tapping and flipping open the page, unveiling essentially memories. And if we open up this first one, the memory will then reappear onto one of the walls that we have in front of us that we can peer into, and based on different angles, we see the perspective change as well. Right now it's turning into a boat as the story unfolds and she's traveling. We can also see how the tides of the water and also the rain, in fact, that is cast by the lights of the boat look so convincing in terms of the fog effect in front of us. It actually is quite magical to perceive, and you can, of course, again, come in a little bit closer to analyze the characters and objects in space, or move into different angles as well. I would say that the majority of the applications here, once you download them from the store, are no longer internet dependent, which is good. And here's one of the later chapters, which transitions into a forest, and she's hiking through, narrating the story as well, but I can still move around, see how the angles and perspectives will change, and the trees actually do look really quite convincing. There's also kind of an icon that appears that tells me to look at the correct spot to see the story unfold in the best orientation. This one is called Undersea, which is a essentially virtual aquarium that you can place anywhere on your walls, and all the fish as well as coral reefs start to flow outwards towards you like a virtual plane or a hole that allows us to peer into the depths of the ocean. So it actually is quite cool, having this real sense of depth, almost like we can reach into it and see something pop out. But of course we can also look on the edge and still see our room, including the wall, where kind of this crack is appearing and everything is moving out from. You can now see a clownfish, almost like Nemo, swimming out towards us. And the longer that we engage with this app, the more elements will start to flow out into our world in front of us, including the kind of currents, bubbles of the water, as you can tell, but also react based on your touch, gestures, and palm. In fact, if we go over to, let's just call him Nemo, and try to pet him or touch him, he will engage and also swim a little bit faster, as you can tell there. So they are dynamic, and you can now see a small reef appearing on this virtual bed, but at the same time, we still have the entire portal in front of us that we can still see. This fish is now starting to swim further and further away. You can touch him to accelerate his movement. Sometimes, depending on the fish, they enjoy getting a pet and they will continue to swim in your hand. Other ones will dart away faster. Some puzzle type of applications, including a globe app that you can also take a look at maps in 3D for popular cities and read back their encyclopedia or Wikipedia entry to learn a little bit more. Insight Heart is kind of a beating heart that you can hold in your hand that can also be used to learn anatomy and physiology parts for medical purposes. Loading times are not too bad, I would say, only taking a couple of seconds or so for it to pop open. Which in a way I guess isn't too surprising because the Magic Leap 1 hardware was still being manufactured up until 2020, 2021, so it's not like it's extremely outdated. It's really just been out of production for a year or so, and here we have it. We have the virtual rocket that we're able to now fly up by pressing the trigger key, and then using the controller pad, we can maneuver its flying location to spin left, down, up, and right. If it crashes into the ceiling, as you can tell there, it will result in a very fiery explosion there. Actually quite cool. And it's doing a pretty good job of some of the simulated patterns on the walls. It's getting a little bit too close. We have to try and also suck up the crystals as it flies close by, really using the motion accelerometer of the remote to do all of the tracking and gain more points, as you can tell there. Kind of challenging, but still very fun, and I think the graphics in this game are actually done quite well. A good example of that AR in practice, we have flames now on the walls. We're able to see the RC car here on the ground. You can tap on the circle key for it to start, and again, using the accelerometer, rotate it to control how it moves across the surface of our room here. And again, similar to having an actual remote control car, you can see different patterns, including the lights there, getting a little bit brighter as it hits a surface or wall. If we crash it really quickly, it will tumble down or disappear under objects altogether. And then if you really crash it with force into a wall, it will also collapse. So we're able to also try other things, including, let's say, the plane. It starts off just in our controller. You can see all the details, and then release on the bumper again for you to control it, moving higher or lower, depending on your preferences. And if we again crash it into the wall, it will then collapse as particles onto the ground. Pretty neat. It can also be useful if you are in certain professions like industrial engineering and you're trying to learn heavy machinery. There is certain guides that you can follow along to operate different machines, as you can still see your surroundings. So those are some more productivity type applications, although these ones that we have here are a little bit more for fun entertainment. Now here's Helio, which is the web browser for Lumin. At the time of this video, it still is fully functional, including supporting video playback in sites like YouTube. Follow me around in space, or again, resize this window based on my preferences. So if I wanted to, I can also, again, pop this around in my space, moving it closer and further away. All right, and now I've opened up a second tab over here. Let's actually choose a site including the Magic Leap website. And we also have YouTube here loaded on the edge as well. And they are really just floating windows in space. So if you are looking at this thing from different angles, you're able to see your perspective change as if it was a physical display that is just hanging there. So you can set up, again, up to a dozen different windows in your surrounding and do a little bit of productivity if you really wanted to. That being said, it's actually not the fastest wearable computer that I've ever used when it comes to web browsing speed, at least. So if you're consuming a lot of media, you can watch them back at full HD and it plays back relatively well with dual band Wi-Fi. But if you're trying to stream back, let's say 4K, it gets a little bit more choppy. That being said, the display resolution isn't that high anyways, so full HD is mostly good enough at this point, I would say. We can also search by voice as well if we prefer, and that might actually be a little bit faster if you don't have a keyboard which is connected, but this serves as an example. We'll go ahead and tap on search, and there we go. We load back one of our recent videos here just by clicking along. That being said, because of the more lockdown nature of this, it's not really running on, say, Android. The application support is still really dependent on what's available in the essentially Magic Leap store. And so, for instance, I don't have a ton of other options for web browsers aside from what is just directly built on in here. So you can't really download, let's say, Chrome or Firefox or something else that you might be more familiar with. You're stuck with using Helio, which is all right, but it is just one of the constraints of having a perhaps less popular operating system at the end of the day that is more designed from the ground up for spatial computing, augmented reality, as opposed to leveraging an existing mobile operating system. But there we have it. This is a video that is playing back, and I'm able to control everything fairly easily, including settings, all the icons you can tap on. If you are clicking on something in between, it will get obstructed, as you can tell. So it has a real sense of depth as you are navigating around. And here is the Lumin App Store, which is called the Leap World. And from here, you're able to see if there's any software updates, as well as some recommended apps. There are different tabs on the top, and you can also search for specific titles as well. And if you find an application that you like, it will expand its view. You can take a look at the trailer information, a gallery, if there's a video that's available, just to learn a little bit more, and then click to download. Most of these apps will take up around 1 to 3 gigabytes of space, so it's not too bad in terms of the amount that it occupies on the system, and for the most part, works as you would expect. And they also have a companion app both for computers, PC, as well as mobile, including Android and iOS. So on the computer app here, you're able to pair it wirelessly as long as they're both on the same Wi-Fi network. Stats here including storage, and you're also able to drag and drop files over from your computer to the Magic Leap 1 and vice versa. So you can tell here, making the file transfer process a little bit more convenient here without plugging in a cable. Now, by the way, because the headset does have iris scanning and eye tracking on the inside, it is able to detect if you're wearing it or not, and also if you're looking at the screens or not. For example, if your eyes kind of point downwards, you're not glancing at the screen for a couple of seconds, it will power off the screens automatically to consume less power. And similarly, if you are not wearing the headset, it will also go into the sleep mode. It will resume again once you pop them back on. And here's a quick look at the companion mobile app on an Android device. If you have Bluetooth turned on and paired to the Magic Leap 1, you're able to use your phone as another remote instead of the included one if you prefer an alternative, and also be able to transfer files back and forth with the Magic Leap 1 under Gallery. By the way, the mobile app also allows you to use the phone's QWERTY keyboard if you prefer that for typing in text boxes when you're doing things like searching, to hunting and pecking using the remote instead. Alright, so as illustrated from those examples, the overall experience itself is honestly not bad, and there are certainly moments where you can kind of feel the magic. It's able to actually pretty convincingly map out the surface of your walls, and it looks like objects are actually coming out from it, and that sense of depth as well as the kind of holographic effect I think is done decently. And the web browsing application is not shabby either. You can connect to something like a wireless keyboard and mouse and be able to place virtual monitors and screens in your physical surrounding, again, in a very similar way to the Apple Vision Pro. Although Apple Vision Pro has better compatibility with Mac OS, this doesn't allow you to further connect with a Windows or Mac computer on top of that. So you are kind of tied down to the kind of browser tabs you have within the computing pack itself. But it's still sufficient for providing a taste of what that AR magic can be like. And I think it kind of justifies the $100 to $150 price that they're hovering at if you just want to play around with something like this to see whether you like it or not, perhaps, before investing in a more expensive system like the Apple Vision Pro, which has, again, higher resolution displays. But overall, kind of placing virtual objects into your physical space with relative accuracy and tracking, those are some of the benefits here. And again, just a shame that such an impressive piece of hardware is just getting soft brick due to a pretty unreasonable design decision from a software level from Magic Leap. But for what it is, still interesting kind of footnote there in history, and also shows how difficult it is to crack this AR space, despite a lot of ambitious investors when it comes to Google, as well as Microsoft with their HoloLens, just never really taking off in a big way. And only time will tell whether Apple's Vision Pro, with Apple's tremendous marketing efforts, will achieve a different fate. So it's possible that some version of this type of AR device can eventually become polished enough that it appeals to the mainstream, perhaps if the pricing also becomes more competitive, as the parts become more regularized, and it could eventually become a form of future computing. But again, it still requires quite a bit of work from both app development as well as the hardware of miniaturizing these parts, increasing maybe the battery life and the weight even more before we really get to that point. But overall, again, a very interesting footnote there in the history of AR development. That has been a revisited look at the Magic Leap 1 here in 2024, as well as its current state heading towards kind of the end of this year. So you can check out more details if interested in the links down below, but for now that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That has been our revisited look back at the Magic Leap 1.